I began working on this video right after I finished my previous video that was about the current state of legal anime streaming, and when I started doing this one, I noticed that this season had the most exclusive shows yet. Amazon has 5, High Dive has 4, and Netflix has
7!
If I would have known about this, it would have been a nice thing to put at the end of that video, but oh well. I have no personal investment in where the shows are unless they're not simulcast, which means they're on Netflix. Then it's my problem, really it's everyone's problem. So Netflix, like I mentioned, has a ton of shows this season. They simulcast Violet Evergarden in a lot of regions, but not the US. I thought that this meant we could expect to see Netflix improve on this front in the future, but nope. It turns out that Violet Evergarden was an exception to the rule rather than a sign of what was to come, as the shows they have this season that I looked into are not being simulcast anywhere and are receiving the TV RIP fan sub treatment. Anyway, if you're new, what I do here is watch one episode of a few brand new shows airing and give you a feel for what the show is like and what my thoughts on it are based off that one episode. Oh, and if you haven't seen my anime streaming video, you should check that one out. Alright, now I'm done. This is PA Works' show for the season, and for me, they're either hit or miss. Also, it's a Netflix show, so it's being held hostage until the end of the season. But you know what? Netflix can keep this show. The premise here is as dry as the Sahara Desert. It's the kind of thing that I can't quite put my finger on, but I've seen a lot of shows that feel very similar to this while making my previous season impressions videos. For this one in particular, it's the 1930s, and this band of international vampire hunters has arrived in Japan. There's maybe a minute of action at the beginning of the episode, and then the rest is just info dump after info dump until the final bit of the episode. The characters are painfully nondescript, to the point where none of them stand out or even have any traits that I could describe to you in a meaningful way. At the end of the episode, the one guy, who I assume is the main character, gets into a fight with a vampire, and they note that she's some kind of special vampire. I should care about this why? Then the episode ends on the cliffhanger of the vampire hunter getting shot in midair. I am content to go on the rest of my life without ever knowing what happens after that point. Do not recommend. This is our first Isekai show of the season, and of course, our main character is a shut-in NEET that becomes hilariously overpowered in this alternate world, but this show's specific gimmick is that he takes on the same persona that he used in the video game. He's able to pull this off because he gets the gear and the body of his Demon Lord game character. The reason for him being in this world is that the two girls on the front cover summoned him, but by doing his Shadow the Hedgehog act, he's able to turn the tables and dominate both of them. You might think that I'm about to do what I always do with isekai shows in these videos, complain, but this is that one rare time where I tell you that it didn't make me want to tear my own head off. It's not a surprise 10 out of 10 gem or anything like that, but the show is so honest about what it is and doesn't beat around the bush. I didn't have to sit through 10 minutes of the show trying to explain its stupid bullshit. I didn't even have to see a scrawny NEET that was clearly out of place. This guy gets teleported here, he looks the part, knows how everything works, and he doesn't freak out about being there for the entire episode. This is an unabashed wish fulfillment show in which the main character does whatever the fuck he pleases, gets what he wants, and annihilates anyone that gets in his way. He literally establishes within the first 10 minutes that he thinks the girls are hot, instead of skittishly pretending otherwise. There's something so refreshing about all of this, and the show isn't a parody as far as I'm aware. Miraculously, it's not even that bad to look at either. Looking back at other isekai shows I checked out in previous seasons, shows like Death March or the smartphone one, I think about how unbelievably bad they are. I look at this one and I think, yeah, it's trash, but it knows it is, and it knows what the people who are going to watch it want. If for whatever reason you feel the need to watch an ecchi power fantasy isekai show this season, which you shouldn't have that need, but if you do, maybe watch this one. This is our second and final, thankfully, isekai show. There's maybe 2 more this season, but I can't handle that. Unlike the previous show, it's a lot less direct, not to mention worse, although it wastes even less time sweating the details of how the protagonist got there. This guy has already been there for 2 years, and in that time, he's managed to control an entire clan that has gone on to dominate countless others. It's not very well presented in the show, but he was able to do this with the help of his smartphone, and at this point, I'm getting flashbacks to last year's Isekai wa Smartphone to Tomo ni, a show I previously mentioned that happens to utilize the exact same gimmick, albeit in a much less serious way. So there's already a few issues with this, and again, it's not really explained in the show. He still has his phone, and he's able to not only charge it, but call his sister in Japan as well. He also gets data too, so he's able to Google everything and outsmart his opponents. It might have been just the slightest bit more interesting if the show spent more of its time on this, but it instead focuses on the lame-as-fuck military drama and his harem of girls that he refuses to recognize as a harem. The show's not good, don't watch it. This is a show about the human body that is to some degree genuinely educational. We follow a fucking red blood cell as she delivers oxygen in a mailman outfit. After she gets lost, a germ invades, at which point the white blood cell force arrives. The rest of the episode is one white blood cell and the red blood cell looking for one germ that escaped, which ends up being hidden inside of the red blood cell's package the whole time. This probably sounds really corny, and it absolutely is, but it's somehow one of the more well-made shows this season. The visuals are solid, every other frame isn't a static image, and they even got a Claris end song. Perhaps most surprising of all, the red blood cell is voiced by Kana Hanazawa. I'm amazed something as seemingly odd as this was able to not only get an anime adaptation, but a seemingly expensive one at that. I don't have any desire to see more of it, but it certainly has some charm. This isn't something that I would recommend to a friend, but if you had any prior interest in this one, or if it sounds interesting to you, do know that it's pretty well made. Here is your trashy, low-effort harem show for the season. Its gimmick is that the main girl is a ghost. What happens is this kid that exorcises spirits by punching them has no money, so he stays in this hot springs lodge that has low rent because it's haunted. This guy's backstory is hilarious. He is somehow more susceptible to being possessed by spirits, which led to him being readopted over and over before he finally got possessed by a day trader and lost everything he owned. Then he studied with a medium so he could kill spirits, which somehow would get him back to his normal life. Wow. Anyway, after he gets there, he's able to see the one ghost girl that inhabits the inn, and after he meets the small handful of other guests, who miraculously happen to all be girls of the same age, he coincidentally gets assigned to the one room that the ghost girl is bound to. They could have at least made the inn significantly smaller, because based on the clientele that we see, there's no way in hell that this place is even close to fully occupied. So after that, you get your typical fare, all kinds of accidental groping and faces red with embarrassment. I don't think it's good, but people are going to watch it anyway, even though it showed the ending within the first 15 seconds. This one has a user score of around 6.5, which is more like a 3 after adjusting for MAL score inflation. Despite this, it somehow takes rank 10 in terms of popularity for this season, even accounting for the 2 continuing shows that I'm not covering in this video. So this is a visual novel adaptation, and it definitely shows. The world is really thin, the main character is a blank slate that doesn't remember anything, there are a grand total of 6 human beings that have dialogue in the episode, and 3 of those are the girls on the cover, who are clearly the 3 roots. So what happens here is this main guy wakes up on the beach and somehow ends up living with this rich girl that also woke up on the beach 5 years prior. As he explores, it seems like there's some sort of prophecy on this island that hints at him being killed. He goes to see the shrine girl for a minute or two, and then the other girl is barely in the episode. It's not good, for sure, but I've seen much, much worse in terms of stiffness, voice acting, all that kind of stuff. Do yourself a favor and don't watch this one, though. This show's premise is similar to last season's Magical Girl Sight, where Happy Sunshine Time has a nasty surprise. It's about this fully adult woman that lives with a little girl. The details of this are not initially explained. So she gets this new job at a maid cafe type place, and the young guy asks her out and immediately gets rejected. After work, she sees the manager woman whisk him away, and then the manager makes her work overtime with reduced pay because she scared the guy off by rejecting him. At this point, Miss Mirai Nikki snaps and knows everything or whatever. By this point in the episode, I was rolling my eyes into the back of my head and into another dimension. As much as I would have liked to stop watching the episode at that point, I endured, because it would be disingenuous of me to not watch the whole episode and still comment on it. But more importantly, I kept watching because I knew it would have some stupid twist at the end, and of course, it did. So the apartment they live in is not really hers. She just murdered the family that lived there and locked their rotting corpses in one room behind 4 different padlocks. And then the little girl is just someone's kid that she kidnapped. I think this one has got to be worse than Magical Girl Sight, because that show at least had a lot going on in the first episode. This was like barely anything until the end. I know there's an audience out there for this stuff. A Google image search for Joker Android theme proves that, but what I watched sucked, and I don't recommend it. I am not joking when I say that this show is more well-made than most of the other shows I watched that are supposed to be serious. Even when there's a crowd of people in the airport, they bothered animating a few randoms that were closer to the shot. I think that speaks more to the general quality level of the shows this season, as Harukana Receive is ostensibly a fan service-centric show about beach volleyball. However, it's not just a straight-up ecchi show at all. It seems to take the sports angle rather seriously, and there's some melodrama going on between the characters. It's in no way outrageous either, it's completely grounded. Now, when I start seeing sports and competition stuff in anime, my brain starts turning off, but I can't deny that this show is very well made for what it allegedly is, and the slice of life sections were totally fine for me. I certainly wouldn't recommend this show, but it's a lot better than its ecchi tag would suggest. Now we have a straight-up sports show that's taking itself very seriously. I guess it's a sports drama. There's no jokey, slice-of-life atmosphere like the last show. This one is about a high school badminton club, and it opens up with their super serious team captain losing a game. After that, the captain feels inadequate and turns club practice into Navy SEAL boot camp. Then there's these other 2 characters that transfer into the school or their first years or something. I wasn't paying enough attention to that detail, but it turns out that one of them was actually the girl that beat the captain in the flashback intro of the episode. So at the end, the friend forced her to join the badminton club, at which point the captain asks for a rematch. This show is really well made, great animation, attention to detail, mostly solid character designs, and just phenomenal presentation. Again, I don't like sports shows, I think they're dumb as hell, yet I was able to watch the first episode of this and totally get behind what it was trying to do. I was really impressed by how it managed to take itself so seriously in a natural, believable way. Am I going to watch the entire show? No, probably not, but there's no denying that it stands out as above average just from watching the first 5 minutes. If you can stomach the sports stuff, or if you're a sports fan, maybe check this one out. I think it'll end up being pretty good. I've been looking forward to this for a while now. The description is pure gold. There were 2 possibilities here. It's a dark comedy, sort of like an anime Breaking Bad type thing, or it's a completely absurdist, potentially trashy gimmick comedy, a show that might even cause a ruckus on Twitter for being offensive. Unfortunately, that second possibility is slightly diminished by Netflix's acquiring of this show, which means this show won't officially release until the end of the season, so not as many people are going to know about the show, which means there won't be much banter to enjoy. What a bore. Also, unfortunately, the show is trash, like straight garbage, in just about every possible way. Somehow it's JC staff that's responsible, and that surprised me, as I can't remember ever seeing a show that was this poorly made from them. It's clearly super low budget, like they didn't even use CG for the performance scenes, just static screens. I'm honestly surprised that they even bothered paying for what I assume are bespoke songs. It barely even works its unique gimmick, too. They're Yakuza men for about 4 minutes, and then bam, they're all girls and don't look even remotely similar. Why the show would gloss over what you would think is the most interesting part is anyone's guess. And even though these characters don't seem to care at all about forcefully having their gender changed, the show still can't decide between girl voice or male voice, sometimes going as far as to show the old male character designs in the background. So instead, what you're getting with this show is a really bad idol training show. In the world of these super low-budget gimmick shows, though, the gimmick is at least unique, even if it's not leveraged well. I would never recommend this one, and don't think for a second that it's anything other than outright bad. This is JC Staff's second show for the season, and you'd think that this would be the A team considering the stunningly low quality of Backstreet Girls. Well, it's more like this show is the B team, and Backstreet Girls is the C team. First off, this show is not good looking. The main character is okay, and the other two characters in the episode are slightly worse, but the backgrounds, well, basically every object and surface, look horrible. It's like a combination of low resolution and bad art. Story-wise, things are not much better. This girl awakes in Silent Hill Otherworld with absolutely zero backstory or explanation as to why she is there. After a nonsensical intro scene with an autonomous typewriter, she boards an elevator and finds herself in a desolate urban setting where she is chased by a bandaged murder man with a big ol' scythe. It's this manufactured tension where things get quiet and, oh boy, he's there. And then she's cornered and hiding and he's right there, but he gives up and she's safe. And of course, she escapes to the next level 2 inches away from death. The next level is the hospital from Silent Hill 1, and there's once again a singular dude in there, but this time he's a doctor. He says he's her doctor and that she just doesn't remember. His thing that he wanted was her eyes, and they foreshadow at this for so long that I think they thought it was a genuine surprise when he ended up being an enemy. It's so hilariously obvious after the second time he mentions eyes, but the show doesn't carry on past this charade until he forces her into a room filled with dozens of jars full of eyes. Just completely brain-dead shit. After that, the bandaged scythe guy somehow gets onto the doctor's floor even though that's not supposed to be possible. He then kills the doctor and ignores the girl for some reason. Then the girl walks up to him casually and asks him for a favor and the episode ends. Judging by the cover, I assume they're going to be partners for the rest of the show. Again, there is zero explanation for what is happening on screen. I understand the idea of a mystery, but you have to give the viewer at least some reason to be engaged. Because in this show's case, the characters sure aren't doing it. The main girl is a stupid, emotionless bore, and her bandaged buddy's only personality trait is maniacal laughter. It turns out that this is a game adaptation, which makes sense. This story might not be so terrible when it's only a secondary element in a game, but it's too hollow a premise to carry a show on its own. This is the third most popular show this season on MAL, and no, I don't think so. This show is on the lower half of the seasonal chart and has one of the lower average user scores out of all the shows I checked out, sitting at a lowly 6.44. So is all that deserved? Well, maybe a little, but it's certainly not worse than Tenshi or the Hot Springs show. It's a slice-of-life comedy with that generic modern moe art style, and its premise and even jokes are similar to Gabriel Dropout. However, that is not to suggest that this show is even remotely on the level of Gabriel Dropout. The main character is supposedly the demon-summoning goth girl, but to me, it seemed like she didn't have much screen time at all. Instead, it's the title character, Joshin, a demon that the goth girl summoned, that takes center stage. She's also joined by 2 more demon characters, Medusa and some kind of cowgirl that wears a shirt saying 100% beef, as well as this fallen angel that hangs out with them for some reason. Most of the jokes, if not all of the jokes, are about Joshin trying to kill the goth girl with Medusa as her unwilling assistant. Of course, every time she attempts it, she gets caught or outsmarted. It was a tiring gag after just 1 episode, and if the synopsis on MAL is to be believed, this is literally the entire show. It does this self-aware thing too, quite a bit actually, and man, it's just not funny at all. Do I recommend the show? Of course not. Here's the thing though. It has a modicum of personality, and the character designs are at least recognizable, which is more than can be said for shows like Satsuriku no Tenshi and Happy Sugar Life that somehow managed to get a higher user rating on MAL. I just don't get it. Studio Lurch? Question mark? Has 2 shows this season, and this one is rated a lot higher despite being lower on the popularity rankings this season. First off, the opening song fucking bangs. Secondly, the show isn't bad at all for what it is and how low profile it is. It's got that really washed out watercolor look with a bright color palette, the kind of thing that might look good if you didn't know that it was being done to mask the low level of detail. But it works just fine for what the show is, which is a moe comedy 4-coma adaptation type deal. There's 3 girls in a school, groundbreaking, I know, with one being this straight-laced, fun-hating wet blanket, one being, well, just kind of there, and then one is this American girl. The premise here is that this American gets herself in a bind with the serious girl where she has to help her with English, but the American girl was actually born and raised in Japan and doesn't know English at all. It plays out in a 4-coma skit format, and the skits go in a Nichijou slapstick absurdist direction, although it's not even on the same planet as Nichijou as far as the comedy is concerned. But besting Nichijou's comedy is a tall order, and it's not like this show's jokes don't land. Personally, it's not something I would likely watch a full 12-episode run of, but I did like what I watched, and if this sounds like it's in your realm of interest, you should definitely check it out. This is the Noitamina show for the season, so it's on Amazon. Just looking at it, I knew it wasn't going to be for me, but after watching it, I can't see how it's really for anyone. It reminded me a lot of another Noitamina show, Higashi no Eden or Eden of the East. For some reason, I watched all of that show, including the sequel movie, and man, it was like stupidly not good. Banana Fish is not quite as stiff and awkward as Higashi no Eden, but the plot is just as, if not more, difficult to follow. Just in this episode alone, I was lost. The show is set in New York City, and thankfully they didn't try to do a ton of English like Eden of the East. The main character is the blonde guy on the cover, Ash. The description for the show says that he's the adopted heir and sex toy of this crime lord Dino. I got the adopted part from the show. The sex toy thing is only very vaguely hinted at, and the heir thing, I don't know where that's coming from. What I really don't understand is how Ash is doing his own thing as the boss of a big gang, but simultaneously reporting to Dino. Why does Dino allow him to go rogue like this? Then the name of the show is basically a nonsensical side note in this first episode. Ash's brother is shown in the first scene as a US soldier that goes crazy and fires on his own guys, and then subsequently goes insane and only says banana fish. Then there's some other random dude that I don't think was explained at all, but he also says it before he dies. So then Ash's brother lives in his apartment just kind of sitting there. I'm pretty sure the doctor that visited him said he was in the Iraq War, and the intro scene also looked like the Middle East, yet the description for the show says he was in Vietnam. Maybe I misheard or wasn't paying attention, but that timeline isn't even possible. Ash's brother barely looks older in the present day than he does in the opening war scene, and Ash himself has an iPhone X, meaning that the show is taking place in at least fall 2017. The US withdrew from Vietnam in 1973, so he should look at least 44 years older bare minimum. Finally, we get to the other main character in this show, who is a Japanese photographer that comes to interview Ash. This is where things really just get, I don't know. He and his boss go to the police station to find the whereabouts of Ash, and it's made to seem like the police are down with Ash. So is Ash an informant? Is he a police officer? Because if he's not, and they know where he is, they should be arresting this guy immediately. He's a straight-up killer. Again, maybe I'm missing something, but in the moment of watching the show, I had no idea what was going on. I spent about 2 seconds looking into the source material of this show, and it's based off of a pretty old and seemingly beloved manga that's listed as Boys Love, and it's targeted at younger girls. I kind of picked up on that last part a little bit, but it's not at all prominent in the first episode. I've never read the source material, and I'm not going to, but it looks like this anime adaptation isn't living up to the legacy of its source. There was literally nothing in this episode that I cared about, had an interest in, or felt was particularly unique. I do not recommend. So that's everything I checked out. 14 brand new shows, a good mix of popular and not so popular. Although a few of them seem to be okay, I'm not really feeling any of these shows, with the exception of Hanebado. If I didn't have an extensive backlog of older shows to watch and I wanted to watch a show as it aired, it would certainly be this one. Not a great season overall, but that's kind of to be expected for the summer. I suspect most people are watching the two big continuing shows, Attack on Titan and Overlord. If you guys checked out anything that I didn't, or you have your own thoughts, let me know down below, and remember that I'm open to suggestions on shows to cover in future seasons. You can give me those suggestions either on Twitter or my Discord server, which should hopefully be in the description. I'm using my iPad to read the script for this video, and it works very well until you get to the very end of the script, and you're just grasping the very bottom of this huge 12.9-inch screen, trying to read the words on the very bottom of it, and you're about to drop it. So until next time, or until I drop this iPad, thanks for watching.